sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. This is MacDonald Carey, and these are the days of our lives.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Ronaldo Barrow, and I am a biochemistry student at the University of the West Indies Cable campus. And today, I'll be posing a question to you, as you've probably seen by the title, which is reproduction a right or a privilege? Well, we'll be looking at a couple of cases where this has been put into question. However, before any discussion is had, I'd like to familiarize myself with a couple of definitions and facts that will lay the groundwork for what is to come. Firstly, we must ask ourselves, what is a right and what is a privilege? What is a right? Rights are inherent to all human beings, regardless of race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, religion, or language. They include the right to life and liberty, freedom from slavery, freedom of opinion and expression, and the right to work and education. Now, what is a privilege? This is a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to a particular person or group. But based on these definitions, the biggest thing that can be taken from this is that rights are for everyone, while privileges are reserved for specific persons. Now you can think about that in context of reproduction. Next up, we take a look at reproduction. What is reproduction? Reproduction is the biological process by which organisms can create new organisms or offspring similar to themselves. Now, over the years, with many technological advancements in medicine particularly, it has made it so that reproduction can be controlled, for lack of better words. And now I will show you a couple of these procedures which have been used to control reproduction. As you can see here, these are the most common procedures used to control reproduction. These include abortions, artificial insemination, in vitro fertilization or IVF, sterilization, vasectomies in males, and tubal ligation in females. However, to dive a little deeper, when there are any advancements in any field, it can raise a few eyebrows and lead to some questions. And with having such control of reproduction, which is a natural human process, some of these questions asked are, is this moral or is this ethical? Well, let's compare the two. Morality versus ethics. In regards to morality, this is a person's own principles of right or wrong, and it can be based on person's beliefs or a code of conduct from religion, culture, or philosophy. Well, in regards to ethics, this is a system of guidelines that can be applied universally to just actions. It can be based on rules from an external source, such as social systems or culture, and it can be applied in specific fields such as business, medicine, or law. Finally, before we hop into our cases, there are a few terms in which we will become familiar because they will come back into play and come back out while we debunk our cases. These are the 4 principles of medical ethics. These are the principles every medical worker must follow in their decision making to become classified as ethical. The first principle is respect for autonomy. This means basically respect for decision making and choices of the client. Beneficence. This entails prioritizing the net benefit of the patient. Non-maleficence, which means in a nutshell to do no harm. And last but not least, justice. This refers to being fair in terms of distribution of resources and adjusting for competing claims. Going forward, there are 2 more terms I'd like to pay special attention to, which are Kantianism and utilitarianism. Kantianism basically means focusing on the inherent morality of an action itself, regardless of consequences. Well, utilitarianism judges an action based on the overall happiness it produces, meaning sometimes causing harm to one person might be justified if it leads to greater good for more people. So, for example, if we put lying into perspective, with Kantianism, lying is wrong under any circumstances, no matter what is the reason behind it or the justification you have for it. Well, with utilitarianism, lying can be justified if it's for a net benefit. Now that the foundation has been laid, we can go on to cover our first case, which is the case of Buck versus Bell in the U.S. in 1927. The Buck versus Bell case, decided by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1927, centered around the issue of compulsory sterilization. The case involved Carrie Buck, a woman who was sterilized under Virginia law that allowed for the sterilization of individuals deemed unfit to reproduce, often targeting those with mental disabilities. Carrie's guardians argued that her sterilization was unconstitutional and violated her rights. However, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., delivering the opinion of the court, upheld the sterilization law, infamously stating, "3 generations of imbeciles are enough." The ruling effectively legitimized eugenics policies in the United States, leading to the sterilization of tens of thousands of individuals without their consent. When you take this case into consideration and apply the 4 principles of biomedical ethics, there is a blatant disregard for Carrie's autonomy, as she had not consented to being sterilized, and along with this, her family also objected. Additionally, this breaks the principle of non-maleficence, which means to do no harm. This not only harms Buck physically, but also emotionally and mentally, as she will never be able to have children. Finally, justice. If you look at this from the point of view of Kantianism, you have to argue that if this is wrong to sterilize someone under this circumstance, it must be wrong to sterilize under all circumstances. However, on the flip side, the time period at which this case was took part has to be taken into consideration, as times were very different in 1927. Being feeble-minded was considered a mental disorder, so medical staff as well as the legal team believed that they were in the right to disregard Buck's autonomy. Well, after that, they took the utilitarianism approach, which means it's okay to do harm if it will result in a greater good. They believed in their minds that they were exercising beneficence by preventing the birth of more imbeciles or feeble-minded people, which means that they thought that they were doing society on a whole a benefit by preventing the birth of feeble-minded persons. However, is this enough to justify it? I surely think not. At this time, we can move on to case number 2. Jennifer sought artificial insemination after her partner, who was a woman, was unable to conceive. When she approached the clinic, the doctors refused to provide the procedure, citing their personal beliefs against treating same-sex couples. Despite her insistence that she was a qualified candidate for the treatment, the clinic's refusal was based on their values rather than medical reason. While this case is vastly different from the first, they do share some similarities. The most obvious similarity being the disregard for Jennifer as well as her partner's autonomy. Jennifer was an ideal candidate as well as in good mental health, yet the doctors refused to operate on her based on their personal religious belief. Justice was also breached. Everyone should be entitled to a fair distribution of medical resources, but the doctors withheld these resources due to their personal sexual preference. This led to a breaking of yet another principle, which is non-maleficence, as it led to a serious emotional harm on Jennifer as well as her partner. Remember, as I said in the beginning, rights are reserved for all people, in spite of their race, sex, religion, or sexual preference. But clearly, the doctors believe that reproduction is a privilege reserved for heterosexual couples only. And once again, they took the utilitarianism approach, which believes that harm in small amounts, which leads to a net benefit, is okay. Final thoughts. When all things are considered, I will say, in my opinion, I believe that reproduction is a right as opposed to a privilege, and it all goes back to what the basic definition for what a right and a privilege are. Reproduction is not reserved for only specific persons in specific classes. Anyone can, and anyone will reproduce, under the right circumstances, of course. And for medical workers to try to take the choice out of the hands of the patient, for personal reasons, I believe can be classified as selfish. Even when the principles are applied, the vast majority of the application falls in favor of the patient, and I am inclined to agree. However, even though reproduction is a right, I think not being allowed to raise their child is a privilege. We've all seen people who are deemed unfit to raise children in an unstable and unsafe situation be stripped of their kids. However, they still had the right to birth them and do right by them. Thanks for listening. Now, this is where we ask your thoughts, and feel free to ask any questions.